Hey there everybody, thank you for stopping by. My name is Scott and you are on Scott's PC. It's been 1 year since I decided to build my first gaming PC, and basically I wanted to prove myself that I can do it. And in conjunction with that, I started this YouTube channel at the same time. So let's go over all the parts that I bought and let's show you all the changes that I've made over that past year. It's very interesting. So let's get to it. Alright, for my CPU, I chose the Ryzen 7 2700X, and the reason I chose a Ryzen system is about 3 or 4 months prior to this first build, I bought a CyberPower PC, a pre-built from Best Buy, that contained a Ryzen 5 2600 with an RX 580. I knew nothing about Ryzen or Intel, and it was just happenstance that I chose Ryzen. And with this Ryzen 2700X, you get 8 cores, 16 threads, and I'm able to overclock it very nicely. And the reason I am is because with the motherboard, I went ahead and I got an X470 Prime Pro from Asus. I had done a lot of researching. I was about to buy a B450. There are so many B450s at the time to choose from, but then this popped up on Amazon.com and I was able to get a good deal on it. I spent about $125 for it. And so far it's been a beautiful board. I've had no problems whatsoever. As far as the RAM, I don't have the box with me, but I'm using a 2x16 kit. It's a Ballistic LT Sport, rated at 3200 megahertz, and I haven't had any problems with it. I'm able to overclock it in the BIOS, the DOCP or XMP, whatever you want to call it, to 3600 without a hitch. It's running great, and it has been for the past year. And going to the boot drive, one of my internal drives, I use a 500 gigabyte 970 EVO from Samsung. And you know, it just goes right on the motherboard. You don't have to worry about any wires, any power connectors, anything like that. And your rig boots up extremely quick. And for some extra storage, I do have a 2 terabyte mechanical storage, the Seagate, or no, the Barracuda, the 2 terabyte, the 7200 RPM one. And so far, I haven't even used up half the storage, even with all the video I've been filming over the past year. And to power that up, I went with EVGA 650 watt gold rated power supply. And the gold rated power supply is fully modular. And now for the GPU part of it. I started off with a 1660 Super from MSI. It's the Gaming X. It's a 1080p gaming killer, all the frame rate I wanted. And that's what I started off with. It's a really nice card. So I have all these parts. What case did I use? Well, for that I have to go into my little walk-in closet because that case is now retired. It's the NZ XT-H510, and it's a great starter case. It only cost $69 back in the day, and I used it for approximately 9 months before I switched to a new case, which I will show you in a little bit. So those are the parts that I used. Let's talk about the changes that I've made over the past year. The first change I made, about a month later. I decided I wasn't getting enough cooling with the included stock cooler that came with it. So I went ahead and I purchased off of Amazon the Hyper 212 RGB Black Edition from Cooler Master. It made a huge difference in the cooling. I'm talking about like 10 degrees or even more, like 20 degrees at full load. I was getting up to 90 degrees Celsius on stress tests with that stock cooler. So this one kept everything 75, 80 degrees, sometimes it's 70 degrees, especially like running the super stress test of like a Cinebench 23 or the Prime 95. So that was the first step that I made. When you're talking about cooling, I was so impressed with this cooler that I wanted to replace it with the fans with a Noctua fan, and that kind of started my journey of becoming like an air cooling freak. So I slapped one of these fans on the Hyper 212, and it made a little bit of difference, but then I thought, why don't I buy a second fan for a push-pull configuration? And then before you know it, I bought all these fans for my case, slapped them all in that NZ X510, and pretty soon it turned into a Noctua build. So, all these fans, they do not come cheap. They're about 30 bucks a pop. So I bought those over time, about one a week for about 6 weeks until I'd filled up the case. And so about 4 months after the build, I bought Noctua's premium cooler, the NHD15. It is a massive heat sink. It's got twin towers, and with that it came with two 140mm fans. And you know, it cooled even more so than the Hyper 212, which is still a premium cooler in itself. So I went on this Noctua journey for about 2 or 3 months. And even though that this came with 2 fans, I couldn't stop there. I went ahead and I bought a 3rd fan to make a 3-fan heat sink. So I went all Noctua with it after about 4 months, 5 months into my build. So that was an interesting journey on keeping my CPU nice and cool. And also during that time, another upgrade was with my GPU. Like I said, I started off with the 1660 Super, but I just couldn't help myself. And let's see, about 3 to 4 months after the build, the 1660 Super, I went ahead and I purchased an RTX 2070, a 3-fan GPU, and I'm glad I did. I was able to get that for $392, and this is before what's happening in the world happened, so I got a good deal off that. I actually bought that from Newegg, and I couldn't be more happy than I did. But the crazy thing about this whole first build thing is that I spent about $900 on all the original parts. But if you go to the Hyper 212, which was 40 bucks, the Noctua cooler, that was 100 bucks. You go to all these fans that I bought, 6 or 7 of them, 180, 200 bucks. I spent approximately $350 on coolers and fans. And you see those, I got 3 boxes of the Hyper 212. That's because I have multiple rigs now. I have my son's rig that has the Hyper 212. I have another a budget build that has a Hyper 212. So, you know, I kind of went air cooling crazy, but it has been fun. And then for the next, I don't know, 4 to 5 months, or about 10 months after, no, 9 months after the build, I went ahead and what I consider an upgrade is I changed towers. Again, originally the NZX5T H510, that case just didn't have the greatest airflow. So I went ahead and I changed it out to Corsair's 4000D airflow. And this case, it's all about airflow. It's basically just an open box. You do have dust filters in there. You have so much air coming out the top here for exhaust. It's a great case. So I highly recommend, if you're air cooling your PC, to pick one of these up. I was lucky and I got one of these at Best Buy about 4 months ago for only $59. You just need to check all your local listings out there. But it is a great airflow case. All right, well, let's go ahead and take a look at the final build. Let me take off this side panel because the tint on this is fairly dark. Keeps everything nice and subdued. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. I can. All right, well, there is what I'm going to call the final build of my first PC. You can see it's all filled up with those Noctua fans, and there's that big old Noctua cooler. You can see the RTX 2070 GPU there with the 3 fans. Oh, and you see those weird looking orange cable extensions. I put those in there because at the time that's the closest color I could find to brown to kind of match the Noctua build. And you know, the highlight of this rig is like my Noctua badge, which I'm really proud of. And you can see that this PC, it's all heatsink and no RGB whatsoever. Just some cheap LED strips that I've also bought off of Amazon just to kind of light it up. All right, and not only did I build my first PC, I built my son a Ryzen 5 3600 build. And that originally came with the RX 580 that I took from the pre-built, but now he has my my old 1660 Super. I've also built an APU build, a Ryzen 5 3400G, and I've also built a Ryzen 5 1600 with an RX 580, and my whole household is filled with Ryzen CPUs. All of them have the premium cooling because I do have those 3 Hyper 212s there, and it's been a hell of a ride this past year. Well, all right, there you have it. All these Ryzen builds in my household It's been a hell of a ride. I want to build some more, but with what's going on in the world, CPUs, GPUs are out of stock, or the prices are through the roof. You can't get your hands on anything. But as soon as I do, I'm going to put together another build. Maybe I'll sell it on Craigslist or sell it on Facebook Marketplace, stuff like that, just to keep the juices flowing as far as building PCs. I love doing it, and if you're considering you're putting together your own personal rig and you have the means, go for it. It could be life-changing like it is for me. Folks, I want to thank you for watching, and as always, I'm going to see you in the next video. Later.